Shade's better.
Yeah.
Most of this stuff is very pliable. Okay, so I want to describe what's going on here. We don't want a whole lot of movement. I'm just putting in just enough so you can see. Just enough. Okay, so this is still within biological energy systems. I'm getting ready to talk to you about some pretty interesting stuff here. Now, a common thing that we are taught in biology is that plants, they grow up towards the sun, to get their food. They feed themselves through a process known as photosynthesis, of course. And so a common misconception, like I said, is that they're growing towards the sun. In fact, what they're actually doing is they're growing towards grid points. Now, there's at least hundreds upon thousands of grids that come and go through all of this right here. In this small amount of space, hundreds upon thousands of grids. So I can sit and tickle them and get certain effects. See this? This isn't just the act of me using a waveform to push something. I'm interacting with light here. I'm interacting with grids. And so when I make a conscious effort or a conscious choice to affect it, see things start to wiggle because I'm interacting with the light of which they're using to come up and attach to. Okay? If you can think of everything like this, everything is almost like on a puppet string at all times. You've got millions upon millions of puppet strings that come right out through your arms, your legs, your torso, your head, and then you have this thing, this big huge toroidal field known as a Merkaba field that is spewing out of you. Then you also have your own energetic system, like a circulatory system. So if I'm using my heart, now I'm just doing it like this to show you I'm getting the same moves, okay? I just now pumped energy from my heart by breathing, squeezing, and then I use that as a pulse into these grid lines. And then they start to feed in my numerics, and then that's what you're seeing there is a process known as buffering. Again, I've talked to you about this before, but once my energy starts to interact with its energy like that, on a conscious level, once it starts doing it, you can see the wiggling, okay? Once it starts to interact on a conscious level, that's when my numerics at this point start to feed into them, and then their numbers start to change. And hence you get all of this movement. You get this field, okay? Now again, it can be perceived analog as well, as a waveform. But the fact of the matter is, that's an illusion. Digital is an illusion as well, but digital is what creates the numerics that creates the entire illusion. So believe me when I say you wouldn't have the waveform without the ones and zeros. The ones and zeros make it all possible. So anyway, here's Ken. I'm going to have Ken step in, and he just came down from Michigan to do some training, so I want him to step in and actually be able to feel these grids. Okay, so I'm going to consciously move around a little bit more again. As you can see, we got this little bitty movement that's kind of dancing around. That's mostly what we're looking for. We're not looking for a lot of wind, okay? Like I said, wind is something that can be, that's just a side effect. But what we want is conscious interaction between his energy and the grid points here. And so there's multiple ways to do it. All right. And here it comes. There you go, much better. That's what you want the most of. You don't want a lot of wind. You want to be able to control that aspect of things and just get the interaction between you and those grid points. So as I showed you a few minutes ago, I use my circulatory system to actually breathe in, breathe out. There we go, angle that a little bit better. To breathe in and breathe out and actually add my biological system and that energy field to emanate out, and then created higher interactions between me and the grids. This is the reason why it really pays to know how your biological field operates. Now you see that? He starts breathing, he starts applying, it starts moving a lot more. Proof that your circulatory system is extremely powerful when you're accessing energy. Would you agree with that, Ken?
Yes, for sure.
So this is the reason why we went through the first portion. Well, number one, we had to go through the ego. Number two, then we had to go through the idea of understanding what our biological energy systems do, so that way we can access things properly, use our glands properly, and I don't know, just to be able to increase one's ability. Every last part of the body provides an intricate and key to the puzzle to how energy operates. So what do you think about this as a lesson, Ken?
Very good. This is good stuff.
This also, people, helps to make your interaction with nature that much more personal, by the way. If you're always constantly at a distance from it and just trying to move wind, you kind of start to lose the idea that you're making a connection with nature. The whole point is to have a connection with nature, and the nature gives you that energy to use freely. Now, something I want to show, he's getting all that movement there, but right here next to him, there's hardly any movement at all. There you go. And keep in mind, people, it's not like there's just one grid line for every one little thing. There's millions of grid lines that attach to every little thing. Millions. These are strands. These are numerics. You're walking through them all times. You're breathing it in at all times. You're exhaling it at all times. There you go. We're going to be working on some nuances here shortly. Ken's going to be working with his windmill that he brought, because we're going to have him do some precise stuff. So folks, remember this. Every tree, every leaf, everything that's out there is growing in and towards and through grid lines. The more you're aware of this, the more interaction and the more quality interaction you're going to have with your environment. And it's also going to make it much easier to know exactly what you're affecting and why. Because you can do macro movements very easily and cause massive systemic movements that you have no idea about. Now, fortunately, those who are not honed, they move more in a collective energy consciousness than a singular consciousness, which is amplified into the collective. So, fortunately, even though people are always affecting the mass, it's usually on levels that are so minuscule that it's, thank goodness that it is on such small levels, because there's some people out there who have things in their head that may not be so good. So, and that's the other portion is don't ever think that you're done mastering the ego. By the way, there will probably be a final coming up soon, which is going to entail all 3 sections, and then we're going to continue doing things that way for a while. So there'll be like 3 sections, and then a final, 3 sections, and then a final. The final will probably consist of 75 to 100 questions. So be aware of that. And I'm considering, and I do mean considering, I don't know for sure, but I'm considering a time limit. We'll see what happens with that. The reason why there's a time limit is because I realize that everyone is at home on their computers and can look up answers at any given time. So if there's a time limit, it kind of forces you to have to look them up quick. Hopefully you know the stuff inside and out by now to where it won't take anything. Study hard. Love you all.